that's one of the things that I actually got pulled into Ergo for, is because it's not trying to do black magic with craziest crypto. It's not trying to be the world computer. It's not trying to be any XYZ that, brings the panacea and, Atlantis will rise from the depths of the ocean. It's just trying to make something that actually works based off of solid basic standards and, improving on the mistakes and the lessons which we can take from the cryptocurrencies before us. And, Satoshi did amazing things, but he's not God. He can't foretell what's going to happen 5, 6, 8, 10 years down the line when people start using Bitcoin. And so I think that's why projects like this have to exist. Hello and welcome to Ergo Cast episode number 1, the premier podcast for the Ergo Network. Today, we are having our premiere episode, and so we're going to go deep into just what Ergo is, a little bit of the history, and what makes it actually unique, and why does it garner attention and deserve your attention. Today, I'm here with Alex Chepurnoy, one of the original developers and one of the original creators of the very idea of Ergo. And so, first of all, I'd like to say, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, my pleasure to be here. Hello, everyone. So, Leah, let's discover Ergo a little bit during this podcast, and hopefully, not the last one, and other developers will appear as well. So I'm in the project since day one, basically, and I would be happy to provide some information about that.
Awesome. So before we get into the history, I think going into why people should care about Ergo in the first place is probably a great place to start. And so before we get into the specifics, I guess it'd be good to kind of talk about the run-up to Ergo in the scientific aspect. So I know you have written a few papers in the past few years around blockchain, and Ergo has various different technologies like NepoPows, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And so a lot of that has grounding in scientific papers and a good basis in academia. So I was wondering if you could kind of summarize either all the papers and some of the inspirations for Ergo that came from that background.
All right, so I'm co-authoring like dozen of papers about blockchain related stuff to the moment. And we also used work of other authors. Starting Ergo, we got into maybe 100 or 200 papers. And some papers are actually very good in theory, but then you think about implementation, then turns out the proposals are not very good, right? Other papers are good in theory and practice, but they not sound together in a good way, right, with other papers and so on. So we made a lot of iterations during design phase to find some good combinations, right, of different ideas, because not all the good ideas sound together. So
what would you say are some of the more interesting papers which have inspired Ergo?
In the first place, the paper about stateless clients, right? The first one made with Professor Raisin from Boston University. There is some new paper I'm co-authoring with Karlampos Papamantou from UMD, University of Maryland. And this is good stuff, but maybe too early to implement. And there are some issues to think about fully stateless clients. So that paper with Leo is very practical and allows to build stateless clients if the full node is not mining. All right, so then NepoPow paper by Dionysius and Agelos. That paper is also about very simple and very efficient design for SPV clients. All right, so now there is some new results, alternative one from Benedict Boons and Dan Bonnet called Fly Client. So I don't know whether it's better or not. So also very good result, but we already stick with Nipopose. Yeah, so about storage rent idea implemented in Ergo, we have a paper published in Bitcoin 18, right? So workshop associated with Financial Cryptography Conference. Right. What else? Let me think.
But there's a bunch of papers on the Ergo platform website, right? You have a list of them.
Yeah, a lot of papers, but yeah, most foundational ones are probably I mentioned. So there is also a paper, not big at all. It's called multi-stage contracts in the UTXO model, right? So we're also contributing a lot how to do powerful contracts in the UTXO model with minimum, very minimum of tools, right? So
so that's one of the good things about Ergo. So I know because for people who aren't actually that in the know on Ergo, with the UTXO smart contracts, that's kind of been an unsolved problem for a long time. So Bitcoin had Bitcoin script, but that wasn't that powerful. And so one of the great things that Ergo has is the fact that we can do full-fledged Turing complete smart contracts on a UTXO system. And so I know, was it you and a couple other researchers from IOHK who wrote that paper on how to do these self-replicating smart contracts on a UTXO system?
Oh, right. So, yeah, it was Dmitry Meshkov, yeah, maybe IHK employee at the moment, but also, yeah, it was Vasily Karin from Research Institute. Right, and the paper, well, actually, it's very theoretical results, yeah, but still, so it's showing that you can have Turing completeness with UTXO model. But, yeah, it's pretty theoretical because in the real world, you don't need for Turing completeness, right? You need for concrete applications to be built on top of Ergo. And yeah, we have a lot of practical applications also. So we show both theoretical and practical results. Right. And some examples already implemented, like crowdfunding, right, and mixing, right. So I know you made some tool for crowdfunding also on top of Ergo, right?
Yeah. So I think we can get into more of the actual like applications later on. But I think right now it would be good for people to just kind of focus on the core of Ergo so people can kind of get familiar with it. And so one of the great things with essentially Ergo has a language called Ergo script, which is based off of Scala. And there's a lot of benefits for that, which we'll probably cover in the future with even potential formal verification. So that's quite fun and neat. But Ergo script as a language allows people to create financial smart contracts that are very simple, all in all. Typically, most smart contracts, which we as a community have made in the past few months, have been 4 to maybe 16 lines, I think, on average. And so it's reasonably digestible for most of them. And the smart contract model is overall quite simple, using registers and the ability to look at the next UTXO you're creating. And so with a very simple language together with a simple model, without having to have an extended UTXO system or add on some extra layers of abstraction onto the UTXO model, one of the really core innovations Ergo has put out into the blockchain space is the fact that, hey, we actually do have smart contracts on a UTXO-based system, almost exactly like Bitcoin, but with a lot more benefits. And so that was really cool. When I actually read that paper about even the Turing completeness of being able to use just a straight UTXO system, for me personally, that was really interesting. And it is theoretical, I agree, but it gives you some assurance that, hey, you can do everything technically.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, so the general idea behind Ergo, use very simple tools, right, and also proven with time. So we are not using any fancy kind of moon cryptography, right? the
Yeah.
term Ethereum guys, I believe. We are not using snarks, right, pairings and stuff like that. Because it's still not very well-known crypto, right? And in building some cryptographic protocols, so very innovative cryptography is way too dangerous, in my opinion. Maybe. All right, so we are using very standard discrete log cryptography from 90s, but on top of this D-log cryptography, we are building support for a lot of cryptographic protocols by using the generic idea of Sigma protocols. Well, this is also very old stuff, so the last very big result we are using is from 1994, right? And with the very simple tools, right, and proven cryptographic assumptions, we have ring signatures, threshold signatures, right? We have also some powerful protocols on top of Ergo, like mixing protocol example. We have a non-interactive coin join.
So that means, for those who don't understand, we essentially have with ring signatures and having this mixing protocol, we essentially have the potential to have pretty strong privacy guarantees and unlinkability guarantees on top of Ergo.
Right. Yeah, and then on top of these Sigma protocols, we are building a pretty simple language, Ergo tree, so it's kind of assembler, right? And then, we have some high-level language, Ergo script, which is similar to very small subset of Scala. And this small subset of Scala is similar to another small subset called pure Scala. So actually, we combine both, and then we can do formal verification by using tools which are already in place, like Stainless. There are some results to be published soon on that. And about other parts of the design, so we are still using very old tools. So for stateless clients, we are using just hash function, right? And for other parts, we are using pretty old and very well-known cryptography. So we are not using some RSA accumulators and other things which are good on paper, but in practice, usually there are a lot of issues about such
right. So on the other end, sorry, do you want to? So on the other end for Ergo, not just looking at the smart contracts, I guess one of the big things is Autolycus, I believe is how it's pronounced, the new proof of work consensus algorithm. So Ergo is a proof of work coin. And so one of the issues, as we've all seen with Bitcoin, is that there's a lot of centralization. And that's primarily in pools. And so one of the great things about Ergo is that it has an ASIC resistant and pool resistant consensus algorithm. And with Autolycus, if you're a miner, what that means is that you have to provide your private key if you wish to mine. And so that inherently, as a requirement, inhibits people from building pools. Though right now, I know as a community, we are starting to do research into decentralized pools. And so inherently, this is a effect of trying to distribute everything and actually make it decentralized, which is what Satoshi Nakamoto originally desired, and not all these agglomeration of all the compute power into these centralized pools, which is kind of what Bitcoin has amounted to. Do you have any other thoughts on how to expand and explain Autolycus to other people?
Right. So in the first place, this is pretty simple algorithm also. So it's similar to Equihash, right, used in Zcash. But we are tweaking it a little bit by including a secret in the process of mining, and then you provide some kind of zero knowledge proof, right, about the solution, and your secret, and you are getting paid to the public key of the secret. And then, so you need for secret in order to mine, and then simple pooling is not working. But currently, I know some guys in the community are working on a pool, right, with pretty different scheme. from pools we know now. So in this scheme, so miner needs to put collateral first, right? And then miner is mining on his side, right? So miner is generating block candidates, and miner is just run away then with block mined, and collateral is going to the pool by using some smart contract. And what's good about such schemes? So there is no possible censorship, right? So the problem with pools is that censorship is possible. Right, and in such schemes, so miner is just participating in a kind of joint reward scheme, right? So some.
So it gets the benefits of pools typically,
joint.
but keeping away the negatives.
Yeah. So so there is no censorship problem then, but yeah, so still small miners can participate again. Well, if they can buy this collateral. So we'll see how things will work in practice. But to the moment, everything is going pretty fine because many proof of work coins were attacked in early days, right? Because of rented power. So it's not the case in Ergo because you cannot rent the power also, right? So not just mining pools are going away, but also rented mining power.
So like nice hash or other services like that aren't really practical for.
Right. So there are some concrete examples of coins. Yeah, I've forgotten their names even, but yeah, some small coins were attacked in very early days by using rented.
And luckily with Ergo, which got released in July 1st, I believe, mainnet 2019, and we had a lot of hash power right from the very beginning. So much so that a lot of people were quite surprised. And so that really helped prevent even the thought of people attempting to just, destroy the coin from day one.
Yeah, it was very surprising for me also. So, initial difficulty was set considering mining power of like 10 gigahash a second, right? And at the end of day one, we have more than 1 terahash a second. So 100 times more.
Yeah, 2 orders of magnitude is a pretty good, overestimate.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, so yeah. So, so even before that in testnet, we saw some high numbers, but not so high, less than 1 gigahash. So some guys, did try, and then so. We've seen very big mining power since then one, but still no any attacks like double spanning and so on. So without pools, it's now very tricky to say who is mining, right? Because with pools you usually see like 2 or 3 pools, right? And now we see like 100 of different addresses, right, mining. So, but I mean.
It's hard to know whether one person owns half of them or not. Yeah.
So yeah, hard to say what's going on even, but to the moment everything is going fine. So yeah, then I think there are no any effects to think in opposite way. So it seems mining is pretty fair, and there is no any malicious mining power controlling 50%.
Yeah. So since mainnet launched in July, we've had a pretty stable network that's been going quite well from day one.
Right. Yeah, so I did talk with many miners having from 200 to 4,000 GPUs, right? And it seems distribution is more or less okay. Yeah, probably. Because so a guy with 4,000 GPUs recently claimed that he has like 7% of mining. Then totally network is about 60,000 GPUs then currently.
Nice. So it's not too bad. So it's not trivial for someone to just go and rent some GPUs to try and attack the network.
Right. Yeah, but let's hope. With pooling schemes with more promotion, so the hash rate will go higher. Yeah, and it's already going higher, by the way, a little bit in recent days. So yeah, hopefully we will have more, because 60,000 is good, but yeah, we need more, definitely, like hundreds of.
But I'm sure, as we have more adoption and more people actually know about the network, I think, currently one of the biggest issues in Ergo, and one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast in the first place, is that we have a lot of strong fundamentals at base, but we're kind of in the period where we're building up on top of that and then bringing people into the whole community and wider ecosystem so that we can build all this up and also get more miners too.
Right. And so, yeah, also about Ergo. So it's proof of work, right? And still it's very conservative whenever possible, right? So still we have 2 minutes on average between blocks, right? So we have proof of work proven with time, with Zcash, I mean, and yeah, many other coins. Yeah, it's modified, but yeah, at the core it's still about the same, like the hash. Yeah, so we have pretty simple cryptography, right? So just hash based, log based, and yeah, critical parts were audited, and even more. Yeah, for critical parts, we had a lot of help from Leo Raisin, yeah, professor at Boston University. Yeah, so he made most non-trivial stuff design, and yeah, then audited also some parts. And we also had audit then by another pretty well-known security researcher. So some reports will be published soon. It's basically done already. So yeah, we are very careful, and we were very cautious about making some crazy things, right? So it was possible for us to do some, I don't know, pairing-based accumulators, RSA or whatever, very new constructions from the, yeah, very new papers. But
So the general approach for Ergo is typically to use stuff that's more tried and true rather than recreating everything anew, trying the latest, zero knowledge, ZK snarks or whatever, but instead to go with, the Sigma protocols, to go with proof of work rather than proof of stake, to actually, use the fundamentals that we know work rather than, go crazy and then find out in 2 years that suddenly the entire network has to be shut down.
Right. So yeah, so the general idea was to use some old and simple tools and to get maximum from them, right? So we are getting smart contracts with a very simple UTXO model, right? So we can have cheap oracles, for example, with just data inputs or just read-only inputs of transaction. So I mean, this is a very simple solution, right? But then you can have for cheap oracles and other contracts which are using other UTXOs from the whole system, right? So there is a very cheap way to ask another UTXO in the system, so data inputs. So about all the aspects, right, the general approach is to use the very simple tools and get maximal them.
Benefit from them, yeah. So I guess on that topic, I can just go through a full list of what Ergo offers, and then we can kind of dive into a few more topics. So as we mentioned before, Ergo is UTXO based. It has, on the high level, a smart contract language called Ergo Script. It has Autolycus for the proof of work consensus, which is ASIC resistance and pool resistance. It has NepoPows, which we'll get into probably in a moment, and that allows stateless clients. It has a storage rent fee, so that one issue with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is that you have, unless there's infinite inflation, the cryptocurrency eventually will deflate to zero because people lose coins, and so that's kind of a problem. And you also have this prolonged state, which everyone has to carry. In Ergo, we have a storage rent fee, which every 4 years you have to respend a UTXO, or else that storage rent fee is taken from that. In that way, you don't have all these lost coins, and you have more of an economic incentive for the system to continue forward. Furthermore, we have, based off of the same security assumptions as Bitcoin, we also have ring and threshold signatures via Sigma protocols. The coin is no pre-mine, no ICO, just proof of work, fresh from the beginning. It's decentralized first, and that's actually a big thing because a lot of coins these days are just focused on, this is, the latest, greatest dApp, but half of everything is just using a centralized server. And so we really care about decentralization first in this community, in this ecosystem. And that's seen even further, given the fact that we have easy tokenization, but also on-chain governance, at least to some degree, for changing things like block size and various parameters.
Mm-hmm.
And so with all that together, I guess what I want to conclude on for that bit of a monologue is to say that Ergo aims to be a long-term, non-infinite inflationary proof of work coin that is based off of strong fundamentals, that isn't using new crazy crypto or technology that will break, but instead something that can subsist for years to come, has a really solid base, can even be formally verified for the smart contracts. And essentially, it aims to be a system which you can put your money into and have it as a store of value, and actually have it be useful store of value. So not just like Bitcoin, where it costs $5 million to move it once and then your money can't do anything, but actually have smart contracts, and so have actual smart contractual money for the 21st century and maybe 22nd.
All right, yeah, so that's a very good summary. So it's still a store of value like Bitcoin, right? So still you trust pretty much the same assumptions, right? So just delock cryptography, hash function, and that's a protocol is making progress with majority of miners, being honest. So following the protocol. Right, but on top of this digital gold token, right, we have store of value token, right? You can build a lot of applications. So we have examples of bonds, right? So some smart contract where you can issue bonds on top of your digital gold. You can do also some financial contracts like local exchange trading systems, right? We have example of such contracts, collateralized or not. We have both scenarios actually. You can then you can build some secondary monetary systems, right, on top of your digital gold. So you have digital gold as collateral, and then you are building some new financial applications, but still, so at the collateral level, right, so you have digital gold, unlike Ethereum, right, which is probably not very good as digital gold, right, and so the focus is on long-term survivability. Then we have stateless full nodes, right, so I just brought this Raspberry Pi, for example, from the shop, so I will run a stateless full node soon. And we'll publish some tutorial.
So what that means is that you're going to have the same security guarantees as a end user, as a full node, but with pretty much the lightness and quickness of light clients that you're used to. And so in other blockchain systems, usually you have to trust someone else's node, and you have no really guarantees that what they tell you about the blockchain is actually true. And so one of the benefits that Ergo has is by using NepoPows, we have this ability to have these stateless light clients where you just download a small proof. So maybe 50, 150, maybe one day, kilobytes, maybe one day a megabyte, just, growing with the size of the chain, but to a very small degree, and have these proofs which allow you to essentially sum up the entire history of Ergo, and then know for sure that you have the same security guarantees as a full node.
Okay, so in Ergo, we have full orchestration of possible regimes of operation, right? So we have full node, which is like in Bitcoin, storing the whole UTXO set, right? Then we have stateless full node, which is processing all the blocks, for example, but not storing UTXO set, right? So this is much more efficient mode of operation because you don't have any database. You are just downloading the blocks and check them. Then we have possibility, for example, if you're joining the network, right? So you can assume, for example, that there is no fork deeper than 1 week, for example, right, in the network. And this pretty okay assumption. Then you can work in this stateless mode, but checking only last 1 week, right? So then this is about crazy fast bootstrapping and full node security guarantees after bootstrapping, but just with very little assumption, right? Pretty okay, because you probably believe that there is no fork deeper than 1 week or 1 month. I mean, choose your security, right? So you now have possibility to choose your security level very precisely. Then we have SPV mode, right? When you trust miners, so you trust that the longest chain is also a valid one, right? So, and for SPV security, we have NIPOPO mode, right? So much more efficient modes. And with NIPOPOs, now we can have real SPV security on mobiles, right? Because for Ethereum, for example, right? So just headers are about tens of megabytes. I don't know. Let me see. Oh, now like 200 megabytes just headers, right? And with NIPOPOS, you can download just 50 kilobyte, and then then you are working in a SPV mode, and this mode is pretty okay if a majority of miners are honest, right? So. But pretty good security, but not full, right? And so even for full security, we have much more efficient solutions, right? And then maybe in future, new mods will appear. So we will add support for. So it's already possible by the protocol. So we will just implement clients for mods which is already in Ethereum called warp mods in parity, fast mod in Geth, right? So what's most of users in Ethereum actually using. So when you're downloading UTXO snapshot from like 1 month ago, and you are getting like full node in Bitcoin, but you are checking just last month of history. So it's pretty much up to you, right? So you have ability to choose, for example, if you have this simple device, right? So maybe you will not be able to catch up with UTXO storing full node, right? But with stateless full node, it still will be possible to use this very modest device. And so on. Then about governance, right? So still we are very cautious about all the things, right, about design. Our governance is very minimal, but miners can change certain parameters via voting, right? So if majority of miners are voting for changing block size, right, so then it will be changed, but very gradually. So from my thoughts, it seems if Bitcoin had the same mechanism in place, right, then this civil war about block size parameter wouldn't happen, right? So we probably will have just one Bitcoin with a block size of say 1.4 megabyte, right? Because if you can vote, then there is no need maybe for civil war.
Yes.
There are less possible, right, motivations.
So the hope is to have better longevity and no hard forking on Ergo. Is to have
so
technology put in place to prevent that.
Right. Yeah. So and so there is also commitment from developers to avoid hard forks, right? So then it's pretty much like Bitcoin in terms of social contract between developers and miners and users, right? So no hard forks, but we have possibility to improve the protocol via soft forks. So, for example, for Sigma protocols, it's not hard at all to add some new Sigma protocol if it's needed for many applications. For example, proof of Pedersen commitment knowledge. It's just Sigma protocol, right? And can be added via soft fork pretty easily. And we have some soft forkability built into the protocol, right? So there is possibility to signal to alt nodes to skip verifying, certain things during transaction verification, like it's done in Bitcoin. But yeah, we also made some few steps further in this direction. So yeah, pretty much it's conservative proof of work, store of value, digital gold, blockchain, right? But also with a lot of innovations.
Yes. And I think especially in regards to innovations, which I think I'm probably going to be covering much deeper in episode number 2, we're going to do a 2019 year in review of Ergo and what we've accomplished in 2019. But on the smart contract side, the one thing that really attracted me personally to Ergo was that you could have such simple smart contracts on a UTXO-based blockchain and have a lot of power. And so, kind of just to give a bit of a sample, this year we have zero interest loans, crowdfunding, ideas for mixing. If you have any others you remember, please fill in. We have a lot of different smart contracts which we've built up as a community. You and me, Alex, we talked about putting auctions on a blockchain, and we kind of did a small back and forth. And within a couple days, I kind of thought of how it would be done. Then Scala Hub in the community came in and actually wrote the contract itself because I was kind of busy with other work at the time. And so, we're not that big of a community right now, but the power of this base blockchain and this really good and reasonably simple smart contract system enabled us, with only a few people at a time, to create these entire smart contracts and dApps that, for me personally, when I look at Ethereum, sometimes it looks like people take weeks, months, or even a year or two to write the same thing. Well, sometimes we managed in a week or two. And so to see the simplicity of what is possible to be done on top of Ergo is it's quite exciting for me.
Right. Yeah. So it was also very exciting to me how actually simple many things, right? Like this auction example. So yeah, I said to you that probably it will be very tricky, right? But then you came with solution like 2 days after, one day, and solution was actually very simple, right, and cheap. Because still we have this decentralized computer, but it's not really decentralized, not really computer like my laptop, right? So it's fully replicated and very limited. Because we care about scalability, and this fully replicated computer is working around the globe, right? Then we have a lot of limitations even on physical level, right? About networks, right? We have and so on. So then you need to get maximum out of very simple things. And so sometimes it was very surprising to me how things could be simple actually.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
So then with that, kind of talking about a little bit of what we've kind of accomplished recently, I think it'd also be good to take a step back, because at least for those of us who have been in the community from day one, we have been able to see what's been going on because it's been public. But how did Ergo originally come to be? Like, was it your idea first? What happened? How did that all, manifest? I don't know if that's really been public. So this is something I wanted to ask you, is like, who had that first idea of, okay, Ethereum, Bitcoin, all the rest isn't good enough, and we're starting our brand new cryptocurrency? What was that first? Who had the idea? What was the first spark? How did that happen?
All right. So, back in 2015 and early 2016, so me and Dmitry Katyona worked on Scorax, right? So some framework for building blockchain applications. So it was intended for rapid prototyping, Right. Actually, it was quite good. So, for example, I did Twins coin, so hybrid proof of work, proof of stake, blockchain concepts in like 4 days. I mean, days and nights. So it was. So we had paper, and it was deadline before submission. But yeah, it was done finally in like 4 days.
Right.
And yeah, so during this work and yeah, so we actually built more prototypes. So like permacoin implementation we had, so some proof of storage scheme, right? And yes, some proof of stake schemes we also implemented and so on. So we dig through the papers, right? So we discussed ideas and so on. And yeah, so finally, yeah, I met Dmitry one day and said, well, okay, um, yeah, those like 5 or 6 ideas do sound pretty good together, right? But unfortunately, papers behind these ideas were around for like couple of years, and nobody did any care about them. So then I said, I mean, those ideas are good, but it seems nobody is going to implement them. And let's go for that.
So it's just as simple as that. You saw there was a big problem, no one did anything, so you had to be the person to do it.
Right. So there are like hundreds of papers around, right? And as I said, many of them are good only on paper. Many are not, but yeah, if we are going to the real world, then yeah, many good papers are not implemented. Some not so good are implemented, and so on. So yeah, it could be quite complicated all. But finally, yeah. So. I came with this idea, and then yeah, so we actually came to our boss back then, so Charles, right? And so we got full support, right, from him. And, yeah, so he said, "Go, guys, to do that." And yeah, so we made some new papers actually, right, to cover some missing holes in the design. Right, and yeah, from May 2017, we are working full time implementing Ergo. So initial public announce was around May 2017. Yeah, it was May, I believe. Right, and from June, yeah, we are working full time actually on Ergo. So not in IHK research.
And so is that just you two? Because now you have a much bigger team working behind Ergo of, I think, in the dozens probably around there. And so how did more people come in? Did you just, have friends you knew, or how did you attract people to come into that?
All right. So basically, yeah, it was me and Katona initially. Then we started to attract some developers from around, and then another guy, so Morphic, joined us right in 2018, maybe summer or around that. I forgot actually. So yeah, in 2018, and Morphic was proficient in. Yeah, so he's doing PhD about compilers theory. So he had own plugin for Scala compiler and so on, right? So he's also writing some papers. He was PC of many conferences in this field, right? So we had this very raw prototype of the contractual language done by me, right? But many critical parts were missed, right? And they were pretty hard for me to solve. So then Morphic, yeah, came and yeah, so now he's leading this project solely, actually. And yeah, so then basically it's three of us and also a lot of developers helping, right? So usually it's about like 7 developers, right? Something like that.
But so you're saying 3 full-time and about 4 others then part-time?
No, so some others are working full time also, right? So we have one guy in Israel, right, working with us full time. So he's now working on, he's working on this Ergo scripts, Ergo 3 stack, and now doing also formal verification, right, mostly. And some other developers we have, and also some helping with documentation and Scala Hubs. So he's from India, so he's helping us with. So he helped us a lot with Sigma. Well, it was all name, right, of the language Sigma state. So with Ergo script examples, right? So half of them done by him, and he wrote papers, right, about that. A lot of documentation. Professor Raisin also helped us a lot with very limited time, actually. So he's super productive, I need to say. So we also have Oskin. Oskin one, so his nick, and now there is new co-developer Kniznik who is who's previously worked on Postgres. So he worked on replication in the Postgres team, right? So now he's helping us also. And we are open to everyone. So if you can work on Ergo core or applications, we are very welcome. So for application developers, we are providing. I hope documentation, but also full support, right? So we have a few papers with a lot of examples. We have more examples in repositories, and then we have forum, right, with a lot of posts, and finally we can help personally, right?
Yep. And we're a very welcoming community. So if anyone is interested in trying to start to write their own smart contracts, if they have a new idea or they just want to learn, please come on the forum, Telegram, or anywhere else, and we're more than happy to help.
Right. And about code development, so there are like 90 issues about Ergo, just Ergo, but there is also another repository with Ergo script. Please come and contribute. So some issues are labeled with bounties, right, attached. So you can get tokens, right, for contributing. And currently there is also very big need for promotion because the project was started, by totally technical people who don't know very much about all that stuff, right? So we are now also inviting all the people who can help us with promotion, right? And so we are very welcoming community. So if you can help with anything, just come to us and propose something. So we also have development fund, right? So pretty much the same scheme as in Zcash. So we just copied it basically, but we are charging less. So 10% for first 2 years, and then a little bit more. We are charging. Actually, not charging. So those contracts are separate. So emission contract we have, and also foundation contract, right? So each block, some amount of tokens is to be released to development fund, right? And this fund already controlled by community, so it's controlled by 6 people in community, so not just developers. There are just 2 developers out of these 6 people. And so if you want to get some grants, so just write proposal. So there is no any formal procedure like in Zcash and other projects currently, so just send your documents to any member of the fund, and then there is.
So that's one of the benefits is if someone wants to get into the community right now, unlike some other projects where it might be hard to get into, especially if, let's say, you have a good history and you want to be, receive something for the time investment you put in. You can come in and, we have very welcoming Telegram and forums so you can learn. There's bounties on the GitHub so you can get 100, 200, I think 300 Erg bounties. And so that's a really easy way to get into that. And even if you're not super technical, some of them are just writing documentation, for example. And so that's an easy way to get in and also get some Erg at the same time. Or if you have a really genius idea that you want to make a big project, then you can do funding proposals. And with all three of these, you have a really easy way to come into the community, partake, and then be someone who owns Erg and actually interacts with both the ecosystem and the blockchain itself.
Right. And so, we have a lot of examples of smart contracts, right? But not so many developers currently turning them into applications. So there are some applications people are now building on top of Ergo, but that's for the second podcast, right?
Yes.
Okay,
so go on for 5 hours because there's a lot that's happened in the past. So.
Oh yeah, maybe a full night, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not going for that right now. Still there are a lot of possibilities, right? So a lot of contracts to be turned into working applications. We need for more wallets, right? So currently we have one web wallet. So some external team is working on Nipopo powered SPV wallet with atomic swaps, right? What else? So people currently are doing projects about tokenization, something like that. I don't know. So they will publish some details soon. So people are working on this pool and so on. So yeah, this is for the second podcast, but still there are a lot of possibilities to join us, and I think this is a very good moment for that. So please join.
Yeah, we're at a point right now where a lot of the core tech has now been mostly set in stone, and so now we're building the building blocks off of the ground floor, and so now it's. With a lot of the tooling somewhat being there, it's a good point now if you're actually technically competent or you're just really excited about Erg to come in, put your own block on top and then join in building the larger ecosystem because now's the perfect chance to do that. And so before we get off to and finish this episode, one thing that I did want to, two questions I want to ask you before we finish off. Those being number one, what was the biggest roadblock you had, and what was what are you most proud of from the development of Ergo? So did you hit some sort of point where it seemed like it was really challenging and somehow you got past that? In the actual development of the project, what was the most challenging and most exciting for you to accomplish?
All right, so the launch was very exciting. Well, to finally deliver, to finish that crazy amount of work. So it was very exciting. So before the launch, team got totally exhausted, right? So for many weeks,
right.
Without any breaks and so the team got exhausted after 2 years of development. Right, and another moment was actually the launch of the very first testnet, so testnet 0. So why we have a version starting with number 3, right? Because actually we have 3 testnets, so testnet 0, testnet 1, testnet 2, and the mainnet is actually the protocol version number 3, right? So the 4th version, if we are counting from 1. Even that's initial version, so testnet 0. So I mean it was exciting, right, to play finally with something. Despite the fact it was very distant from the final right version of the protocol. And despite the fact I found some double spending bug like 1 week after, right? So actually it was totally broken testnet, but still, I mean, it was
I mean, that's why
pretty.
it's a test net and not the main net. So
Right, yeah. So it was testnet 0, right? So it was broken, right, almost immediately, and then other testnets were not so bad, right? And yeah, things got better with time for
yeah.
sure.
So then, with that, what do you think on a personal level? What is most exciting to you for Ergo in the future? Whether that's 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Like, what do you actually envision? Because you put a lot of time and effort. Sounds like most of your life for the past 2 years into this project. So then, what's your long-term vision of like why is this actually worth all that effort? What's there to gain? Not monetarily, but like you're building a new technology. There must be a reason why. And I was wondering, what's your perspective on that?
I see. So, the hope that, people will find it useful. So, in the white paper, it stated that Ergo is mostly intended for regular users, right? So, not for corporations willing to build the private centralized somewhat on top of the blockchain just because it's a fancy buzzword these days, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe not, maybe it's
DeFi
not.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so DeFi, I don't know, AI plus blockchain plus some other fuzzy words. So yeah, so hopefully people will store value, right? Especially where it's needed, right? And hopefully people will find way to build some new economies on top of that, right? So I have a pal who is doing a lot of good things in Kenya actually by launching some local currencies backed with collateral provided by some charity organizations, right? And so they made some measurements and found that when for example charity organization is buying some goods, right? It just provides them to people in countries like Kenya, right? So let's call it, I don't know, the simple money spending, right? And when charity is giving money for the collateralized contracts, and then some local currency is issued, and people are actually spending it for uh, their needs. For example, starting businesses, local business, right? So measurements made that the second scheme is like 25 times more efficient, right, in terms of economic output, for sure.
Oh
Right?
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's not just about right providing something to people, but yeah, it's about to launching some new you know economies in places which do need for improving the conditions desperately. So
Right.
hopefully people will find it useful to store value, right, and then to use this stored value, right, to build then something, so some kind of new financial models and so on. So I'm reading a lot of things about this stuff actually, right? So I even have paper presented this year at Ramix conference. So this is conference about alternative monetary systems, community currencies, complementary currencies, and so on.
What was the paper called?
It was on contractual money, right? So
Yeah. So
yeah,
yeah.
so it was about the idea that in addition to ordinary functions of money, so store of value, unit of account, and the medium of exchange, right? So there is now with the help of these digital technologies and smart contracts, the new kind of dimension, right, of money. So money now are units of contractual execution, right? So they can be even created on the fly, right? Just for the means of contract execution and then disappear, right? So they can be issued and bounded to some contract, right? Then it's not really maybe free money in terms of medium of exchange and so on. So for these kinds of money, right? So money with inbuilt contract, which is enforcing the usage. So other functions are actually becoming secondary, right? So yeah, I mean, so the paper is something about that basically. So some thoughts about how functions of money could be changed, right, with the new dimension we have now. So with contracts which are possibly binding newly created tokens, right, to some contract. Okay, so yeah, hopefully, finally, cryptocurrencies could be useful for the people. That's my hope.
That is kind of the hope, Satoshi, like we can assume, probably wanted is for people to actually use cryptocurrencies for something and not just have it, go in circles on centralized exchanges with gigantic centralized mining pools.
Right,
we don't really think that's what Satoshi wanted, and to some degree, I think Ergo is trying to push against that and push against, the Bitcoin, Ethereum governance issues by having that be on chain with voting and provide essentially alternatives to these core issues which both Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a bunch of other projects have faced over the years. And that's one of the things that I actually got pulled into Ergo for, is because it's not trying to do black magic with craziest crypto. It's not trying to be the world computer. It's not trying to be any XYZ that, brings the panacea and, Atlantis will rise from the depths of the ocean. It's just trying to make something that actually works based off of solid basic standards and, improving on the mistakes and the lessons which we can take from the cryptocurrencies before us. And, Satoshi did amazing things, but he's not God. He can't foretell what's going to happen 5, 6, 8, 10 years down the line when people start using Bitcoin. And so I think that's why projects like this have to exist, because you can't always infinitely improve on one project. And to some degree, I don't think everyone or almost anyone even wants Bitcoin to just keep hard forking infinitely and becoming this ultimate blockchain with all the latest technology. That's not really its go-to mission to some degree. And it's also, I think you could argue that in 8 years, if every half a year you hard fork and change something drastic, in 8 years, the resemblance of what Bitcoin becomes and what it was, they're not even really the same blockchain. And so having that continuity, even with all the, somewhat glaring issues, might just make more sense. And having projects like Ergo come up anew, which attempt to solve these issues from a more foundational aspect and, from the start, I think is why the project exists and why it's actually needed and it's important. And we can't just keep infinitely using Bitcoin, even though I think it will continue to exist for a long, long time. So, don't get me wrong on that.
Yeah, so Bitcoin, maybe is a good store of value, right, as well. But let's see. So time will show, because after block rewards are gone, basically gone. Like if there is half a Bitcoin per block constant reward, I mean, then it's not quite clear how economy will work. So Ergo has something new here. So this storage rent component. But I mean, this is, if we are talking about decades, right?
And so it's not very palpable yet to most people.
Right.
But anyways, before we get on a big aside, talking more and more about Bitcoin, I guess the last thing is, what links would you recommend people go to for the website, the forum, or where else would you recommend people go to join the greater Ergo community?
Oh yeah, that's simple. So ergoplatform.org. So there you can find documents, So white papers, we have few of them. We have teaser, so simplified white paper, and we have resources to. We have links to all other resources on the website. So Telegram groups, exchanges, what else? Email. And yeah, we have links to libraries, repositories, and so on. So yeah, repository is on GitHub, and we have forum at ergoforum.org. Right, so please come.
So ergoplatform.org, sorry, ergoplatform.org and ergoform.org. And so if you want to join the community, go to either one of those, and then everything else is pretty much linked through those.
Yeah, and so please join. Yeah, so we are here to stay for a long time. So yeah, so it's pretty much the same. I believe messages. Any project must have. So yeah, so instead of doing a lot of experiments after launch, right? So it's better to do homework before it, right?
Yeah.
And to try to launch something which is here for a long time. And yeah, hopefully Ergo will be here for a long time, and hopefully it will be useful, right? So not just
that is the goal.
not just to pump and dump, or to wait for another crypto summer, right? And for crazy speculation and stuff like that. So to launch Ponzi schemes on top of, and all that stuff. So crypto kitties maybe, but I hope crypto kitties are not possible in this simple UTXO model, but who knows?
Right. I mean,
what
who knows? Yeah. I mean, especially because this is brand new technology, so who knows what's the creativity will come eventually, especially if Ergo begins to grow and people start to see just how usable it is.
Right. Yeah. So hopefully, it will be useful, right, to store value for people who need to store value. After all, and it will be useful also to build new kinds of economy, right, in places where it's very needed. So that's it.
Perfect. So once again, it's ergoplatform.org, ergoforum.org, and for this current podcast, which you're watching right now, it is ergocast.io. I unfortunately did not follow the .org standard, but I'm going to be a techie podcast, so we took the IO for input output. And perfect. So, please follow the podcast. There's also a YouTube channel. You can find all the links, RSS feed, iTunes, etc., for the podcast at ergocast.io. And so if you're interested in, staying up to date about everything that's happening in Ergo, in the Ergo community, in episode number 2, which will be coming out in the new year, in 2020, I'm going to be going into, hopefully with some other community members, the wonders and great things that we have developed in 2019 after the mainnet has launched in regards to smart contracts, dApps, and what's also in the near future, so that you can see what we have succeeded, all of the successes, and then what we can see that will probably happen in 2020. And so thank you very much, Alex, for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
And thank you very much, and thanks for watching.